Scope. Now we're going to start talking about scope and getting really clear on the purpose of your engagement, because there's a really big difference between what you look through when you're looking through a lens and what you see on the outside. And what's in and out of scope is a really important communication to be able to have with people when you're actually beginning to start your engagement conversations and you're making decisions about what the priorities are for your community. So here's what's really important about designing a really effective scope. And that's using the SMART principles, and many of you will be familiar with those principles. You know, making sure that your statement is simple, measurable, achievable, realistic, and has a bit of a time frame where we understand what the limit kind of is to it. So I want to give you a bit of an example. This is not out of Bungalyup. I'll talk to Bungalyup in just a little while. But I was doing some work with a local government, and there was a plan basically to remove all the dinghies from the foreshore of the river, part of a new policy. And before we went out, we needed to get really clear about what the scope was. The community were telling us very clearly that the scope was, do we agree with the removal of dinghies from the foreshore? However, the reality was actually the policy had already been made, the decision had already been made. There'd actually been engagement on that. So we had to actually go, well, actually that's not the scope of the project. And we needed to have a way of describing that and defining that for the community as we went out. So that statement, yep, sure, it's simple. Yep, it's measurable. We can know whether dinghies have been removed or not removed. It's actually not achievable because the policy has already been made, which means it's not actually very realistic, and we've got no sense of time frame. So, as I say, we needed to actually come up with a different way of developing a scoping statement. So this is the alternative we came up with, that our project was about identifying the support that dinghy owners required so they could comply with the new policy by July 2013. So the key of this project is not about a discussion about whether dinghies stay or go, but to find out what the community needed so they could comply with the new policy. Didn't mean the conversations were any more comfortable, but at least they were far more transparent and honest. And that is a statement. It's pretty simple. It's pretty clear what we're there to do. We're there to identify the support. It's pretty measurable. We'll know whether we've actually delivered supports or not, and we'll also know if we've met it within the time frame, which means we've made it a scope that's actually achievable within the budget of the engagement, within the time we had to engage. We knew that it was achievable and it was realistic that we could identify the supports that people needed. And we were clear about the timeframes that were involved, both in the engagement and in the overall compliance. So having a really clear scoping statement is a really important way of helping communities and stakeholders come and stay on track for the engagement project that you're actually focusing on, and not having conversations going off left and right into areas that you may not be able to influence. And that's why we actually develop clear scoping statements. So that's the dinghy example. Let's bring it back to CRCs. Before we jump into the CRCs though, one of the interesting things about the scoping statement is that it may not necessarily be just one statement, that actually you may actually have a practical purpose to your engagement. Yeah, you want to find out community priorities, you want to find out community needs, you want to build community partnerships, whatever that is. However, you also might have a relationship purpose. You may want to actually build a sense of trust. You may want to actually build a sense of commitment to the work of the CRC. Yeah, there's a relationship, a feeling element, and having both of those, thought about both of those, becomes important when you're actually defining the scope of your project. So when it comes to good old Bungalyup, you know, the practical reason that we're going out to engage is that we wanted to make sure that the services are meeting the priority needs of the Bungalyup community for the next 3 years. That's why we're going out and engaging. The relationship purpose, or the relationship focus and scope for this project, is that we actually wanted to know and appreciate, we wanted the community to know and appreciate more about what the CRC offers. So we had a practical purpose of information, but we had a relationship purpose which was about enhancing a sense of value.